And ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Two Schmoes Show, a show that remains to have its dignity, because I have not used a chat AI to write the intro of this show yet for an episode. That is pending in the future.
It's a matter of time.
It's a matter of time. How long do you think we are from the first AI-generated podcast?
Oh, I bet we're already there.
You think so?
Yeah, I'm sure there's some. Like, just think of how many tech bros there are out there, right? I guarantee they've done it.
Podcast.ai. Yep. Interesting. First episode, Joe Rogan's interviews Steve Jobs. Okay. Well, I'm the infamous Orion, and I'm a schmo.
I'm Cairo, and I'm also a schmo.
And welcome to the Two Schmoes Show, ladies and gentlemen. Today we'll be ballooning up your news feed with the most stupid story I've seen in a long time. Get it, Cairo?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very clever, thank you.
I don't even have. I should probably pull up some articles about that. I didn't even think to. Like, I don't know. Like, what's your thoughts on? Let's start. Let's start.
Okay.
Is it a spy balloon? Is it a weather balloon? What's your take?
I think it's pretty irrelevant if it's a spy balloon, because Google Earth pretty much has pictures of everything in the world right now, and I'm sure a communist nation like China with its own space program wouldn't have that much of a problem getting a fucking satellite in the air to spy on anybody. In fact, I'm almost certain my phone is spying on me right now for China. Granted, I don't have Tic Tac on it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah,
but I'm sure there's something too.
Yeah. What is your opinion, good Chiral?
I generally agree.
Yeah.
I think it's basically, yeah. So I was curious, like, what altitude do satellites generally be at? It was about 1/10 of the way to where satellites are. I feel like a lot of people don't realize how high up in the air this thing was. It was 60,000 feet.
That's pretty low.
Well, no, that's very high.
Is it?
That's yeah. Commercial airliners typically fly at about 20,000 feet.
Oh.
Yeah, no, it was way up there. There's a bunch of both local and it was nationwide news pieces about don't try to shoot the balloon because you can't. You literally can't. If you shoot straight up at the balloon, your bullet won't reach it, and you're just going to be shooting bullets somewhere in your own vicinity.
Bullet go down.
Bullet go up, bullet go down. Yeah.
Oh, dear me.
Yeah, and that was part of the problem with why they didn't want to shoot it down over land, was that they knew that because it was so high up, they would have very little control over where it ended up eventually. So if they wait for it to be over water, they don't have to worry about it landing on somebody's house. Because, 60,000 feet up, right? Assuming it only moves 1% off from where it was, laterally side to side, that's still 600 feet.
Correct.
And even in some place like Montana, a lot of people were saying, like, oh, why don't they just shoot it down over Montana? Well, you need to have it be somewhere that you can practically get things to shoot it down at. 60,000 feet is very high up in the air, so it's not like you can just fly any helicopter up there and get it. You're going to run into problems with the, actual engineering of your devices not working at those altitudes.
I still remember the fleet of Republican senators and Congress people who were fucking posting pictures of if Biden's not going to shoot it down, I'm going to shoot it down. And they have a fucking shotgun while on their private helicopter, which thanks for outing yourself as not being exactly the most humble person in the world to your constituents. But you're telling me you're going to go fucking shoot that thing with a shotgun? You're going to go right up to that balloon and shoot it with a shotgun?
I have no doubt that they thought they could.
Oh my God.
In reality, though, this made for an excellent training exercise for the new F-22 fighter jet. I believe I've heard talk about this. As far as the public is aware, this is the first air-to-air live training that the F-22 has had.
That's
Or
pretty.
because it's not technically training, it's like live use, right?
Yeah,
So outside of training, this is the first time that the F-22 has been used. And they shot down a balloon. They did it, to be fair, it worked, but it is quite amusing that this is the first time it's been used.
that sounds about right with the way history has been working lately. So, China's official statement on this that it was a rogue weather balloon, correct?
Yeah, I believe they even went so far as to claim that it wasn't a government weather balloon, even it was a private civilians.
A private civilians. Okay, someone's
Yeah.
social credit score is going down.
Which, you know, like how, who knows how accurate that is? It's probably not,
Yeah.
but I believe that was the claim that they made.
Eh, I don't believe them, but oh well.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree that there's nothing that they can gain by flying a balloon, an actual balloon over the US that they couldn't already be doing with a satellite. So realistically, from an intelligence perspective, it's pretty useless. And it really just seems like an attempt to cause some sort of a provocation from the US.
Yeah, I agree. I think
Mm-hmm.
it is pretty telling how fast we latched to this thing when it's fucking balloon.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not like it's even got that it could have that grave equipment on there because the balloon automatically exposes that it's meant to be disposed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the general idea of weather balloons is that they go up and up and up and up and collect data as they go up and transmit it back to Earth until the balloon pops and then it comes back down.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did find here there's an official statement from China's foreign ministry after the balloon was shot down where they expressed strong dissatisfaction and protest against the US's use of force to attack civilian unmanned aircraft, which is still pretty bullshit because even if it's a civilian unmanned aircraft, it is illegally in our airspace. So,
Would you
eh.
rather there were some civilians in there to justify the action?
Yeah. Why don't we have a person up there then, China? They're apparently sending military ships out now to recover the debris, which is spread across 7 miles of the ocean, including a heavy crane for recovery. Interesting.
Mm,
It's
mm.
really hard to get an idea of the scale of this thing because it has to be really big, right?
It has to be.
Like 60,000 miles, or sorry, 60,000 feet is about 12 miles, and it's visible with the naked eye at that range. Like, very obviously visible in the footage that people have been posting. So, this thing had to be massive.
Hmm. And you're telling
Yeah.
me a private citizen could afford that
Yeah, of course they could.
on China
It's just
dollars?
China's Elon Musk.
Oh yeah.
Whereas ours bought Twitter and decided to break it, theirs bought a balloon factory.
You know, I think theirs made the right decision.
Yeah, I don't think there's a whole lot more to say than that. It's just like it's a weird thing that happened, and people have been really fixated on it.
It's like Balloon Boy, but for a new decade.
Yeah. Whenever I see something like this get this much media attention, it always makes me wonder what are they not covering? Because
Exactly.
generally, this kind of stuff they take it as like a smokescreen almost.
Yeah.
Um, one thing that I've noticed that's been happening over the last couple of weeks, it hasn't really been talked about a lot, is the number of prominent Democrats in the House that are getting kicked off of their House uh, roles on committees,
Yeah. I noticed
which
that
is
too.
not surprising, but it's not being talked about because people want to talk about the fucking balloon.
Well, that you see, people might get offended if we take a side in politics and say, you know, it's kind of bullshit to see one party take over all the committees.
Mhm.
And it makes you wonder what the fuck they're doing with like a single partisan committee like that when everybody preaches bipartisanship as the most important thing right now.
Yep.
Oh well. Speaking of Congress, our favorite Congressperson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is apparently complaining about her salary at working in Congress being as too low and making her miserable.
Good. I'm glad. Maybe she can cook up some more Jewish space lasers to get a bit of side income.
There we go. Kanye would like to have a word with you, Marjorie.
Yeah, I did hear something recently where apparently she tried to walk some of that back to obviously mixed results. Um, yeah, I don't know anything more to say than that, other than it was pretty stupid that she claims she doesn't believe it anymore.
Yeah, well, in my opinion, the only thing that she really has said that I truly believe about her, and like all of her politics, is that she really liked Donald Trump. Everything else, I'm not sure about her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's hold up.
Yo,
Doge is trending. Why is Doge trending?
Elon owning,
Oh, okay,
Twitter.
good. I was worried it was like more sad news about the Doge dog.
Oh yeah. For those of you who don't know, Doge is not doing well.
No, Kabosu is old pup.
Old pupper received one too many pats on the head.
Yeah.
Well, now I'm officially sad. I see Doge trending as well. Do you ever feel like it's kind of gross when you open up a trending tab and you can see like the stock for it now?
Yeah, that's pretty fucked up.
Yeah. Oh well.
Mm. Okay. Here's some real news. EA, the games company, is bad.
I'll have you know, good sir, they made the, the gamest game of all time. Madden '08.
They have canceled work on Titanfall 3.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't even think Titanfall was in their wheelhouse.
Oh yeah, they bought Respawn, who
Really?
make Apex Legends. Yeah.
Okay, never mind then.
Yeah, from what I understand of the timeline, Apex Legends developer Respawn has been working on a sequel to Titanfall 2, which is a sequel to Titanfall, of course, for quite a while now. During that process, they had basically a Titanfall 2.5 that became Apex Legends, which is now the very popular battle royale game. Um, and this week we had uh, multiple announcements from Respawn that they were both shutting down Apex Legends Mobile
Mm-hmm.
and that they are canceling an unannounced single player game set in the Titanfall universe, which is very frustrating and disappointing. Titanfall 2 is one of those games that was very much overshadowed by the other games released at that time. This is always like, it's just EA is just literally the fucking worst. They had Titanfall 2 release in the same week between EA's own Battlefield release and just after, in the week prior, the new Call of Duty release.
Really, really
And
bad.
then they
Yeah,
complain about it not doing well.
yeah, really fucking dumb shit right there.
Yeah. Yeah, it is messed up. I guess the good news out of this, it's not even good news. It's just like, yeah, these things haven't been canceled yet. Respawn is still working on 2 Star Wars games, apparently, in
Okay.
addition to Apex Legends still. And their CEO, Vince Zampella, who is very respected in the games industry, has been put in charge of the Battlefield franchise after 2042 sucked. So hopefully there will be a bit of a turnaround on the Battlefield front from that, but it's just so disappointing. And a bit ironic because the Titanfall games were based on the Source engine. And it is just part of how it continues to be, where Source Engine games don't get a third game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a shame.
The legend of Valve continues. Third games
Mm-hmm.
never exist.
Nope. Not
It's
even for people who use their game systems, not even Valve.
yeah. It's such a weird place Valve is right now as a company.
Yeah.
Anyway, quick question for you.
Hmm.
What do you think it is like right now? In this is a weird way of putting it. So like I'm
Mm-hmm.
moving it over to gaming a little bit. Do
Yeah.
you think it is a weird time to be making shooters in the games industry?
It seems like it.
Yeah.
There's a the big thing for me is that in the first person shooter space, there are so many. It feels to me like where the MMO space was like 10 years ago,
Hmm.
where you have not Call of Duty, sorry, CS:GO, Valorant, Apex Legends, PUBG, Rainbow Six, I'm missing one or two, but these games that have all been out pushing like 4 or 5 years now have dedicated fan bases, people who play them daily, weekly for huge hours every year with regular microtransactions that allow them to keep funded. Where trying to push into that space feels like trying to compete with like Dota or League of Legends or World of Warcraft, where it's like you can still do it. You can put out a first person shooter in the current year and do well if you make a good game, but it's not like it was 10 years ago where everyone was doing it to try to cash in on the trend. It sort of had all of these camps that have been made now, and people are sort of staying within them.
Hmm.
That said, I think the indie space is doing very well, even in shooters lately. Um, like Neon White was a big one last year that was an absolute indie game that sort of came out of nowhere and took a huge amount of attention and garnered great reviews as a result of it.
To be honest, I think AAA gaming's kind of sucked a lot recently, and we are
Mhm.
in like the golden age of indies.
I don't even know about that. I think it's easier to be critical of the stuff that does suck because there's been shitty AAA games for pretty much forever. It's just easier than ever to get people to agree that yeah, this sucks. But even with that in mind, like uh Cyberpunk, right? Sucked at launch, but they were able to eventually fix it.
Hmm.
There's a lot of stuff like that.
Okay, I'll give
And,
you that because
and we had Elden Ring. We had Elden Ring. We have Breath of the Wild still. It's just very much more centralized, I think, as to what ends up um, being big than it was before.
okay,
The Dead Space remake has come out and has been garnering great reviews.
but the original Dead Space was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Oh well.
It's definitely a good time to be an indie dev, though. No doubt about that.
Did you hear the rumor about E3 this year?
That no one's gonna be there.
Yes,
I did, yeah.
that
It's
is.
rough.
We've come a long way, man.
Yeah, so reportedly, and it'll be embarrassing if this doesn't turn out to be true, but according to industry insider reports remaining anonymous, I think most people expected most of this, given how last year went. Sony is not going to be at E3 because they are going to continue to do their what does they call it? State of play, I think what they
Yeah,
call it.
yeah.
Nintendo has been doing their directs to great success, so they don't see a huge push need to beat E3. And I guess Microsoft is the big one where they've also uh, basically agreed that they're not going to do it either. So E3 is going to be pretty bare. Was it, I heard that Devolver Digital will probably be the highlight dev making their appearance.
Devolver's E3 is always like the best each year, though, so I'm okay with
It's
that.
very good. Yeah, it's very good.
I'm so sad. There's like something kind of I totally understand. I kind of prefer the direct formats, but I do
Hmm.
miss the event of it all.
I do too. I don't know. I would have hoped that rather than go this way, where there's not going to be there, it would turn back into more of an industry event
Yeah.
than an entertainment piece. And that just doesn't seem to be what's happening. Maybe it'll have to if the fan attention starts to wane. They're going to have to shift back into making it an industry event, but only time will tell.
Yeah. Oh well. Hey, let's talk about Twitter and why it's being ruined even
Oh
more.
yeah, let's talk about Twitter. Big news this week. We heard that Twitter is going to start charging for access to their API.
Which is kind of weird.
It is.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, what was the other one? There was also something for I can't remember what it was called. Something else that Twitter was going to start charging for, or something.
The golden check
No, it
marks.
was yes. In order to get full access to analytics, you had to have Twitter Blue.
Yes.
I believe is what it was. Yeah. Um, both of these are pretty obvious and obviously predatory attempts to prey on smaller Twitter accounts that realistically can't afford this kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, a huge number of the accounts we're talking about this before this just started that use Twitter's API are automated bot accounts that don't do really anything. They're like hourly upload something, upload a meme or a picture, or uh, check for sales. I think that was a big one too, where there's quite a few Twitter accounts during the GPU and console scalping issues where they would have these bots set up that would send out alerts when new stock came in, where prices got updated, and were of great use for a ton of people.
And
And now you're gonna have to pay, what is it, $8? Something like that. Actually, I don't know if they've said.
I don't know what the API rate is actually.
Let's see. Oh, I am looking it up now.
Mhm.
Starting February 9th, this is from the Twitter dev account, we will no longer support free access to the Twitter API, both V2 and V1.1. A paid basic tier will be available instead. And they don't say what that paid basic tier will be.
They really are just trying to capitalize on anything on Twitter. How long do you think before our
Mm-hmm.
profile pictures are going to be removed and we have to pay for those?
I don't know. If it gets to that point, it's going to be literally the end of Twitter.
Yeah.
Because people won't. People just won't do it. It
Yeah.
doesn't make sense to do it. Who cares? Like, what's the end of it going to be? Are they going to pay you for every tweet you want to make? It would make you pay for every tweet you want to make? Doesn't make sense. It's these are the exact kind of decisions I would expect Elon to make.
Yeah.
Where they're dumb and he's forced everybody with knowledge of the platform out by his stupid decisions up to this point, and there's just no one left to push back and calling out this stupid shit.
It's rotting in real time, my dude.
You know, I have a feeling that the Twitter API access is part of a larger push on Twitter as a whole to reduce third-party apps, particularly for smaller creators. There seems to be, this was the thing when the Twitter Blue was talking about being revamped, was that part of paying for Twitter Blue would basically give you priority in comment sections and search results, right?
Okay.
And as a result of that, if you were somebody who was trying to make a living online, you would basically be forced to buy access to Twitter Blue, or else you risk being impersonated,
Yeah.
or you risk not being competitive with your peers. And it seems like a way that they are trying to lock that in even more by making it so that third parties can't have free access to the API, right?
Mhm.
So you aren't going to have free apps that let you view the underlying information and allow to interact with it outside of the Twitter app. And then on top of that, charging people to look at basic interaction information further forces people into that sort of avenue where you have to pay Twitter directly rather than use a free app that's been aggregating this information already. Yeah.
It really feels
And
like
realistic,
sorry.
I was gonna say realistically, the large companies and stuff that actually make money on Twitter, do you remember the Twitch numbers that came out about a year ago, where or I guess it wasn't even that, it was probably like 6 months ago, back at the end of the summer, that showed just how few people on Twitch actually make an income, a living doing it.
Yeah, wasn't that like a big leak that caused Twitch to get really
Mm-hmm.
pissed?
Where it was like fractions of a percent of people make more than I think like $10 a month.
Yeah, I remember that.
Guarantee you it's the same thing on Twitter. They're talking about, Twitter sharing ad revenue, and everybody immediately asked, well, how is that supposed to work? Which was met with I don't know. It's the same thing. The idea that people can make money off of Twitter is so wrong. The types of people who have large enough followings to make money on Twitter through advertiser revenue sharing absolutely have to already be large enough to be making that money in many, many times over on other platforms.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So, yeah, it's dumb. And the real victims are going to be the animals every hour bot accounts.
To all those good animals that we'll be missing out on, I salute you.
Mm-hmm. Keep fighting the good fight.
It really feels like Twitter has become more of like a service and less of a community like it used to be.
Mm-hmm. Yep. I think it's been that way for a while, though.
I mean, yeah,
This
before
is just
Elon. Mhm.
this is just speed running the end.
Yeah, we're slamming the gas pedal.
Yeah. Apparently, YouTube this week also had a similar announcement where they're going to start uh, offering ad revenue sharing through YouTube Shorts. And they're
Oh
doing it
yes.
in
Mhm.
the stupidest way possible.
Oh no.
I don't have any articles pulled up about this because I kind of forgot about it until we started talking about it here. But from what I understand, the gist is that they're going to be doing it in some sort of a pooled way where, because of the inherent nature of the TikTok like content being heavily, or I guess not even heavily, loosely transformative, where it's very often people just shit posting over the exact same song for millions of hours of content that gets posted. YouTube's idea is that in order to have ad revenue splits with that, all of the ad revenue basically gets pooled. YouTube takes their cut, a cut of it goes to the people who have licensed the songs that are being used, and then from whatever's left, that gets distributed to the people actually making the content based on, I guess I would assume, click. Not no, it is specifically not going to be click through. It's going to have to be through watch retention because there were two major what the fuck moments that were realized from this. The first being that when you first click into the shorts tab on YouTube, the first short it shows you is not counted.
What?
Yes, that doesn't count towards you getting a split of this ad revenue. And even better, if you go onto a specific content creator's page on YouTube and click to watch one of their shorts on their page, that view is also not counted. Yeah.
So what's the
It,
point in doing it at this point?
that's a very good question. I don't know. It seems like it has. The only thing I can think of that is even close to like a devil's advocate type of thing is that however they determine what a view counts as for shorts doesn't work when you click into it. It only works when you transition from one short to another short. That's the only thing that I can think of is that there's some sort of BS technical limitation that they shouldn't have in the first place, but that exists for some reason and might even be artificially implemented to cause exactly this, where, you know, people who are, you would assume generally that the people who are making the best content have their good content shown higher up the list than the people making bad content. So when you first click into the shorts tab, you're going to be shown something that is high quality, right?
Yeah.
That would make sense at least. Um, and it's just bizarre. It really doesn't make sense. On the WAN show this week, Linus Sebastian, uh, talked about this in a lot more detail because he has contacts at YouTube that he can reach out to directly. And he actually, as a sort of thought experiment for this, went through the step by step process, going to all of the, various upper and upper, more and more levels of management, basically at YouTube, trying to get a straight answer for these very obvious questions. Why doesn't this first view get included on the revenue split? How is the revenue split going to? And he was completely unsatisfied with the responses that they were giving it. So, yeah, it doesn't look great.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was supposed to look good?
It looks good for YouTube, I would imagine, and their advertisers.
So when I first heard about this decision, I got super excited because one thing I miss from old YouTube days is short form animation. Animation on YouTube, it's got fucking shafted ever since they put in the retention priorities on watch time. And well, I thought this was going to be our way back to those glory days because I love the old school animation community of the internet, and it's kind of gone because of capitalism, for lack of a better way of presenting it. And I thought this would be like a great venue to bring it back, but here we
should be. But no, it's inherently with the pooled revenue sharing that they're doing with this. It's definitely going to hit people like animators more because they are unlikely going to be the ones following these like TikTok trend type of crap. They're not going to be including licensed music in their work to the same degree. But because, as far as I understand, because it's pooled, the license holders of the music that's being used are still going to be taking their cut first before it gets distributed to the people actually making this stuff, regardless of whether you use that music or not. Unless there's some more sophisticated system, but I don't trust YouTube to actually go through the steps and do that.
YouTube is the recording industry's bitch at this point. Because they know for a fact that a lot of people use music, YouTube for music.
Yeah.
Up there with Spotify and whatnot. And they try.
I love it. Because I do that. Every time I click into because I have YouTube Premium as well. So every time I click in the actual YouTube app, because I don't use YouTube Music, so why the fuck would I? I click on a track, it hits me with like a little banner that says, please use the app that we made for this. And I just get to laugh at them.
Please like our app. I swear, we're not collecting your data and giving that to marketing trends. Please use our app, Mr. Chiral.
It's like if I want to do that, if I want to download another app, I'm just going to download Spotify.
Yeah.
The entire point of why I'm on the YouTube app is because I only want one app and I already fucking paid for it.
Yeah. I don't understand a lot of like this music streaming. And it's kind of appropriate that we're talking about this on the night of the Grammys. We forgot to do that this year, didn't we? Like the Grammy noms?
I don't think we did.
Yeah. Oh well. Say la vie. Music streaming to me is such a weird like little world because it's very much like the absolute worst of like both worlds because it just prioritizes, popular music, the real money makers, and it's like this self-feeding Ouroboros where it just keeps eating itself over and over and over again in a manner to make it give more money and just try to be this constant revenue pushing machine, which, oh god, I just described a lot of streaming services right there, but at least they like give other things that aren't like the top 20 shit a chance to like grow.
Yep, yep. I really feel like we're coming to the inevitable end of all of these venture capital endeavors.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So
Where all of these companies, Netflix, Twitter, YouTube to a much lesser extent, uh, are based on the idea of this cycle where you do venture capital funding rounds at the start, you get massive growth in the middle, and then the ideal end is that you start to make shitloads of money for your investors at the end until you pivot to uh, sustained growth. Right, that's the idea. Is that eventually you maintain some sort of baseline amount of revenue, and we're at the point where a lot of these services should be pivoting to baselining out pieces like Netflix and Twitter, where they just need to be able to keep their doors open and keep profits coming in. But the VC people want more and more and more money, and they have to keep, like we're saying with Elon Musk here, making these stupid gimmicks to try and squeeze as much money as they can, whether that's Netflix charging businesses $1,000 a month, or sorry, not Netflix, Twitter charging businesses $1,000 a month, or Netflix trying to make everyone in their aunt get their own Netflix password, regardless of any logic that actually is behind that, or any advertising that they did themselves that encouraged people to do that. They're hitting this oh shit moment where they're being told that they're not making enough money,
yeah.
even though they're still turning profits usually.
So what comes after the venture capital cycle?
The companies close.
Damn.
Or they get bought by someone bigger,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
That's like what happened with MySpace, YouTube, or not YouTube, Yahoo, all that shit,
yeah.
right?
You're right.
Some bigger company buys it for pennies on the dollar to help the underlying individuals close out any bankruptcy or debt that they have.
Well, it was fun while it lasted, gang.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess that's as good a time as any to talk about the Netflix crap.
Yeah, good call, my dude.
You know, Netflix accidentally released information this last week that details what their future plans for cracking down on password sharing are going to be.
Oh boy, I hope it's really fair.
It would you know it's not. So from the start, this smacks of the kind of bullshit that Apple tries to pull. That only Apple is able to get away with because they are Apple. Do you remember a couple of weeks ago? I still have this problem with because I have an Apple TV. I got an Apple TV when I signed up for my internet here instead of a Spectrum cable box because for me it's functionally the same thing. And with the Apple TV, eventually I would just own it rather than having to continue to pay monthly on something that I'm just renting.
Okay.
Right now, I can't accept the new terms of service on my own Apple TV unit because I don't have another Apple device to view the terms of service on. They won't let you view the terms of service on the Apple TV and accept it on the Apple TV. You need a separate Apple device running iOS 14 in order to do that.
You're kidding me.
I'm not.
Is it
It's very dumb.
that feels illegal?
It should be. Without a doubt, it should be. Because until I can do that, it's not impacted me yet, but I've seen quite a lot of other people that have this happen. Until you accept the new terms of service, there's a huge number of Apple first party apps that it just doesn't let you use. Because it wants you to accept the new terms of service. But you can't because you don't have an iOS device. Um, we're seeing a very similar thing here with Netflix, where their goal for this password crackdown is to have users set a primary location for their Netflix account by a TV that is signed into that account and connected to that user's Wi-Fi network. So if you don't have a smart TV or you don't have a home Wi-Fi network for whatever reason, right off the bat, you're immediately screwed. After that, all other devices signed on to your Netflix account would have to do so by being connected to that home Wi-Fi network associated with the account signed in on that TV. So if you can't get a smart TV and a home Wi-Fi network to set it up with, you can't sign into your Netflix account on other devices that aren't that TV. And then, as the real kicker, because, there's easy workarounds to that, right? Say you go to a friend's house, you set it up on their TV with your account, and then they sign in over onto theirs. The big thing that they're trying to do is that then, after you have it set up, every 30 days, you have to re sign in again on that home network, or else it kicks you out and you can't do it. So, say you're a business traveler, someone who, anybody at college or away for any sort of education, you're immediately screwed. And there, as far as anybody can tell, there's no way to work around that. Say you just have two houses. Say you're divorced and your kids use your Netflix account to watch TV, and then they're going to be with your former spouse.
Yeah.
They now can't use your Netflix account if they're gone for any period of time. Say you're in the fucking hospital. Too bad. No Netflix.
Netflix don't care that you're in the fucking hospital.
They don't.
You know who's going to
It is such an incredibly short-sighted solution to a problem that doesn't exist.
I like how they also admit that they track your IP address as well.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Netflix came out and announced in response to this big roast that there is not going to happen soon. And by not being soon, they mean that it'll be, it'll be before the end of March. So, you've got a month and a half to figure out a solution to this if you're not able to make this work.
That's not going to last very long.
Mm-hmm. It's very dumb.
Yeah, yeah.
It also doesn't have any obvious answer for what happens if you need to move.
Yeah, what happens if you get a new router or if you switch internet services?
I don't know. It doesn't say. I would assume you just get told to go fuck yourself, but
yeah.
Or the more likely answer is that you have to fuck around on some call center phone lines for way too long for a problem that shouldn't exist in the first place.
Hello, sir. That's what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm. It's not great.
It is not great. It is more pro-capitalist, anti-consumer bullshit.
Mm-hmm. I think that's enough of that rant for now.
You don't even have Netflix.
I don't, because of this kind of shit. I'll say, as a closing pit, this is the kind of stuff that's going to push people back into like what happened with Napster. People are just going to start pirating things because they don't care. If I was paying for Netflix and they tried to do this shit and I couldn't access my Netflix account, I don't give a shit about the technical legality of it. If I have paid for the right to watch Glass Onion and I can't because of something that's outside of my control, I'm gonna fucking watch Glass Onion either way, whether it's the way Netflix wants me to or not.
Yeah.
And that's the inevitability of this that they don't seem to realize, is that people don't give that much of a shit about working within the law. How many people drive the speed limit, right? The more they try to push this kind of stuff, the more normalized they're going to make sharing things like MP4s that people technically shouldn't be sharing because people just don't give a shit.
Yeah. Netflix's one job was to prevent that kind of shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's starting to get really bad with places like YouTube and any streaming service that you try to use on a desktop. I tried to watch the Last of Us episode on my computer that I bought and paid for and put together myself. That is perfectly capable of streaming. I watch YouTube videos in like 4K all the damn time because why not? I pay for YouTube Premium. Why shouldn't I?
Yeah.
If you go on the HBO app in Chrome and try to watch anything, it immediately forces your resolution down to 480p.
Isn't that weird?
You can't change it.
Yeah.
And they claim it's to stop piracy. Never mind that I can go out to any of these piracy sites and immediately find this content in full resolution. Shows how well it's working. but they claim it's for piracy. And YouTube does the same thing. You can watch YouTube videos in whatever resolution you want to, but as soon as you try to watch a movie or a show that somebody's put out there for rent, or God forbid you actually purchase something on YouTube, you get told to go fuck yourself. Watch it in 480p or do it on a different device. And the real kicker is that YouTube has a Microsoft Xbox app, but you can't download it on a regular PC, even though the two things are basically the exact same.
Shh, sweet summer child, you're not supposed to say that.
Mm-hmm. It's very frustrating. And places like HBO don't even have an app. They just tell you to go fuck off.
HBO Max, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. It's a shame. These places have, and we'll talk about this later, great content. The Last of Us is phenomenal. But you have to watch it their way, or they say no.
Yeah. I second all of that. I don't understand the fear of piracy anymore, because it's not like there aren't services that are being made to support piracy as well.
If their whole point is to fight this battle against piracy, they are hands down losing.
Yeah. I know.
And it's dumb. Yeah. The way that you stop people from pirating stuff isn't to make it harder to pirate stuff. It's to make it easier for people to not need to in the first place. That was why Netflix was so great at the start. Places like people didn't pirate shit when you could go and rent whatever fucking VHS tape you wanted, because all the VHS tapes were the exact same fucking quality and cost the same amount.
Yeah.
For the most part.
It's this weird control freak issue that a lot of these companies have.
It's so backwards. So backwards. And they're going to get a hard lesson in capitalism, I guess. And we'll just have to wait and see if the lesson that they're being told is enough to make them change. It might not be.
No, it's not.
Probably not. I hope so, but I don't know. Either they're going to have to change or go out of business. One of those things is inevitable.
But Kyril, if I don't have Netflix anymore because they went out of business, how am I going to fucking watch like 50 seasons of Nailed It?
I can guarantee you those will be available to watch other places.
Thank you, because preservation is also a thing why people pirate shit.
Media preservation matters.
Media preservation does matter. I'm one of those very few people who like argue for that shit in professional settings. Because everybody else is like, no, we just got to make it scarce because scarcity is an important thing with the market. I'm like, no, it's not. Like, scarcity is something you do in like a brick and mortar store. When it's something like the internet where literally anybody can preserve anything. In fact, I will say this, I have some preservations of some media that you can't find on the internet that easily. Like, you have to go through VPNs and go to like other countries to find. I have that shit on my end because it matters to me that this shit is preserved. People are going to preserve the things they find important to them. So you might as well make it that you're the one preserving it. That way you can keep that capital like brand recognition rather than having some random schmo on the internet like myself who has some access to some very rare, very niche music videos that really just don't matter to anybody but myself.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah. So speaking of HBO and The Last of Us, do we have anything else to cover before we start reviewing that?
I don't think so.
Cool.
No, we should get into it.
The Last
of
Us
is an exciting one.
Well, we have 2 episodes to cover.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, okay, yeah. The most recent one was exciting.
The second one was an episode, and I guess
episode 2,
yeah,
I am not fond of.
Episode 2 is
from a narrative perspective.
Yeah.
It is for me. Okay. I think seeing now that we've had, the first 3 episodes, I think that episode 2 should have been about 15 minutes longer. And it would have done something, if they had their heads on straight, really interesting that we haven't ever gotten. in the Last of Us games. And would have been to show us some of Tessa's backstory.
Wait.
Okay?
Okay.
Here's my suggestion,
Yo.
right? Here's my thought. Let's actually go through a quick rundown. So,
Hmm.
episode 2 opens in, I believe, Taiwan or Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I want to say Taiwan.
Yeah. Eastern.
It's a very obviously an Asian major city.
Hmm.
Opens up on some scientist who's being collected by some very obvious military personnel, taken to a lab, being shown some stuff. And as we find out, it turns out to be some of the first identification of the cordyceps virus that ravishes the earth.
By the way, it was
They
Indonesia, according to the wiki.
Indonesia.
Yep.
Yes, that makes sense. The scientist is shown a slide of cells, and there's a really good bit where there's just like some fun banter they have, where it's just like, you idiot, why did you prepare this like it's human cells if it's fungus?
Mm-hmm.
And they're just like, well, and then they show her the body of this person that they collected the fungus samples from, and they do some really good visual effects. I thought that scene was very well done in showing the visual side of it, right? You get to see up close for the first time what the fungus is doing to these people's bodies without being jump scared by an old lady eating her mom or her daughter's neck organs, right?
It was really creepy to me when she cuts like an incision into like the skin,
Yeah.
and there's just mold in there.
Yeah.
That
It was very well done.
that is, I don't know how they even did that, other than it's
It
obviously a cadaver puppet.
it's a prosthetic,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. That's how most of that stuff is done. But they did it very well. It was done good.
Mm-hmm.
After that, cuts to the doctor talking to one of the head military people who had collected her, and the answer to it is to lock down the city and kill everyone. Don't let it escape the city. They, of course, don't know how widespread this fungus is, but the doctor recognizes that it is so bad that this has jumped to humans that the only way to potentially contain it is to kill anybody who has potentially been infected.
Yes.
After that, we cut back to where we left with Ellie, Joel, and Tess after they have left the Boston quarantine zone. They're now in more of the old metropolis area of Boston, amongst the large skyscrapers that are in various areas of disrepair. And notably, Boston was given the same treatment. Huge amounts of bombing happened in the city of Boston that caused most of the damage that you see. That is the same attempt to try to contain the virus, ultimately unsuccessfully. And for a while, we follow the three of them as they make their way through Boston, trying to get to the town hall where there is supposed to be a group of fireflies waiting for them.
One small note I want to make on this: they
Mm-hmm.
did an audio stinger, right, with
Yeah.
Ellie going through like that little area, the little flooded like hotel lobby they went through, and there was like a piano.
Mm-hmm.
And when she got scared, usually like we have an audio stinger to make us scared as well, to like startle
Mm-hmm.
us. But she fell on the piano, making it like a diegetic audio stinger, which that
Yeah.
never happens. I'm
It was
impressed.
very natural. It
I
was
love
very
it.
good.
Yep.
There's a couple of things that they had in that scene in the hotel that were very well done. Very appropriate nods to the game that it's, of course, based on. The flooded hotel is actually a scene that was in the game later on in the episode that'll be airing tonight,
Oh,
actually. They sort of removed it from there and put it up into here, which makes sense. That's a very gameplay heavy segment where you're going around doing environmental puzzles and doing combat. So taking the setting and just sort of moving it around to get these nods to the game is very appropriate. Where you get the piano scene, the waist high water, and the quips between Joel and Ellie about how she can't swim, and he, just like not that deep, can just walk through it. And in particular, at the end of that bit of the hotel, where it's a small thing, but showing them helping each other up over the walls is a recurring sort of gameplay trope, right?
mhm.
Where you have the wall that's just slightly too tall, so you have to have one person work their way around to help the other person up, right?
Yeah.
It's something that usually isn't a thing in movies because why would you do it? But they took that opportunity to make that gameplay nod, and then you get a nice little bit of exposition and conversation between Joel and Ellie as Tess is finding the way around to help them around the debris. It was a nice little, homage to the recurring gameplay mechanic that they have. After that, we have them approach, I believe it's after that, they get to the old museum that they have to cross through, right?
Hmm.
Working their way through the museum, it has clearly experienced a large number of infected at some point, but they appear to be. It gives the appearance that it was a long time ago. Joel makes an effort to step on the fungus that's outside the building, and it crumbles very obviously into dust, which shows that it's not alive anymore and is clearly very aged. Um, Fun little bits like that helping to sort of flesh out the differences between the way that the cordyceps work in the show versus in the game. So they go into the building, they find that somebody recently died in there, to their surprise, and it sort of puts them on edge as they're going through it. And they get a very good sequence after that that is almost one for one from the game, which is Tess and Joel fighting off a group of clickers. And we get the reveal of the clickers, I guess, as well.
So I love the design of the clickers in
Mm-hmm.
The Last of Us TV show. I
Yep.
don't know how they look in game. I might just look it up right now. But like,
Almost exactly the same.
really,
Yeah, it's very, very well done. Excellent use of prosthetics to do it.
it is so beautiful. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
disgusting, but it's also like incredibly beautiful at the same time.
There's a good little bit earlier on in the episode where they're just sort of wandering around the deserted city where Ellie is just sort of rambling and asks about what do people who've been infected for a long time look like. She asks about something that's like, are these guys that explode into a big cloud of spores when you kill them? And they're just like, no. And then she's like, well, what about the ones I hear about that have like their heads exploded open from the fungus? And they just both sort of glare at her just like, you don't know what you're talking about. That's pretty damn accurate. And then we get to see it. That was a good bit of foreshadowing.
Okay, I do see what you mean. There's like some aspects to the game that can't
Mm-hmm.
be replicated in real life, but
Yeah,
yeah,
it's very close though. It's a very good adaptation of it.
I am just in love with the prosthetics. They're
Mm-hmm.
they're very practical because it's just a mask basically,
Yes, for
and
sure.
that saves so much time and money for the production.
Yeah,
I'm impressed by them a lot.
throughout most of it, the visual design has been excellent.
Hmm.
Yeah. After that, they fight off the clickers. They make their way out of the museum, and they are continuing on their way to the Capitol building. Uh, Across the city, because they're now on top of the building, making their way across rooftops, they see a large group of infected at the ground level. And that is when I think that's when they talk about the idea of the sort of like hive mind of the fungus a bit more.
Yeah.
How you have to watch where you step because if you step on the fungus and it's alive, it can alert other infected in the area to come to that location.
Which is creepy.
Bit of foreshadowing.
Yeah.
Um, so they make their way over to the Capitol building, and they find all of the Fireflies are dead. The obvious sort of story that's unfolded amongst the bodies is that at least one of them became infected, and in the ensuing fight that happened from that, all of them died.
I love a happy ending.
Mm-hmm. So this is where this episode frustrates me a bit
Okay.
because in the game, the reason is again Fedra. That Fedra came in and was sort of hunting them down and is the sort of tense force that is causing this moment. In the game, it's the virus, or sorry, in the show, it is the virus that caused this encounter. Uh, and we get the reveal that Tess has been bitten. In the previous encounter with the clickers, she was bitten at some point and has been infected herself.
Correct.
Yeah. Leads to a moment where Joel, seeing all of the dead fireflies, is basically just like, "The fuck are we doing here? This isn't our problem. Let's just go." And Tess is just like, "I'm not going to be going anywhere. In fact, sorry, Joel." And she basically gives Joel no choice but to take Ellie the rest of the way. Tess knows, of course, that Tommy was a member of the Fireflies and probably still is, and that there's that connection between Joel, that there should be some way for him to find more Fireflies. Seeing how fast Tessa's infection had progressed reinforces that Ellie is very likely immune. and that it's not just some random person that bit her and gave her these scars.
Yeah.
And she, as a result of this, what was it? One of the dead fireflies is sort of resurrected zombie style by the virus. Joel shoots and kills him, and they show that the rest of the horde that they saw earlier had been alerted by that, by the the fungus on the ground doing little tendrily things.
Mm-hmm.
So Tess tells Ellie and Joel to go, to run, and that she will buy them time. By which she means make a nice big suicide fireball with some barrels of oil that are sitting around. Yeah. And then we get the weird kiss thing where
that is unsettling as fuck.
Yeah. That is absolutely one of the writers' fetishes, and they found some way to convince their editors to keep it in.
What the fuck was that?
I am completely very weird.
Yeah.
And unnecessary.
Yeah.
Completely unnecessary.
I was sitting there watching that scene, and I'm like, am I missing context? What?
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It was just out of nowhere and seemed kind of pointless to me.
Yeah, it was just... I like the horror of it, don't get me wrong, but like...
I didn't like it then, and I didn't like it when they showed it again in the preview to the third episode.
Yes.
So Tess is waiting for the infected to come up on her position where she's gonna light her and blow them all up, and that happens and the episode ends. Miss anything? I think that's the gist of it.
It really doesn't do much other than introduce clickers.
It doesn't. I kind of hate that. The big change that I would make, this is a short episode, it's only 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Compared to the hour 20 of episodes 1 and 3. And I believe episode 4 is slated to be at least 60 minutes, but I'm not sure on that. That might have just been placeholders that I saw.
Okay.
I hope it's longer than 60 minutes, because there's a lot that should happen in episode 4. We'll talk about that later. But I would make one big change to episode 2. And that is that they're already doing this these preview flashback things at the start of the episodes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to use them better. Episode 2 shouldn't have been set in Indonesia. It should have been set in Detroit. Because in episode 1, we're told that Tess is from Detroit. And what we should get after the scientist lady says, bomb the city, is we should get a cut to a 20 years younger Tess as the city is being bombed, showing her story and how her interaction with the world kicked off.
Okay.
Then we get more time with Tess. We give a little bit more of a shit about her when she inevitably gets killed off later. And it helps fill in the details more. One of the best things that they've done has been to help fill in more of the details. And we'll talk more about this in episode 3. But they give Bill, a character who had even less screen time in the game than Tess did, a huge amount of backstory. That it makes it a much more sympathetic character. It makes it someone you care about. And giving Tess a little bit of that treatment, even just like 5 or 10 minutes of just like, yeah, this sucks. This is, or to just give a little bit more exposition of the brutality of the federal government's response to this virus would have also been good. So I wish that would have happened, and I was disappointed that it didn't. It seems like an obvious thing, right? You have Joel's backstory in episode 1, you get Tessa's backstory in episode 2, you get Bill's backstory in episode 3.
You know, one thing, and I'm going to get a little bit more into this when we talk about episode 3.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a lot of these flashbacks could serve as like just remembering why these people are living in general, like what it means to be human.
Yeah.
That's the vibe, the theme I thought I was getting from The Last of Us.
Yeah. I don't like the flashbacks that don't tie back directly to the characters that we're being told about.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it feels really unnecessary. And like they're kind of wasting the time that they have, to me. That's the best way I can describe it.
Okay. Yeah. Because without saying too much about episode 3 yet, it's like the most human shit of all time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like,
no doubt.
That is just, it's up. It's basically up.
Kind of.
Yeah. Should we just go to episode 3? Because that's a fucking great piece of television.
Episode 3 is phenomenal. So, from the start, episode 3 starts with Ellie and Joel on their walk from Boston to Bill's.
Yeah.
Very clearly in much more rural areas. And there is a great bit that they added that wasn't in the game, where Joel says that they should, take this longer path rather than the short one. And Ellie's just like, why the hell would we do that? Is there like bad guys there or something? And he's basically just like, well, no, but there's some messed up shit there that I don't want you to see. And Ellie, being Ellie, is basically just like, okay, whatever, old man, and just walks on anyways.
Okay, boomer.
And that, yeah, basically, that messed up shit turns out to be a pile of long dead bodies that weren't infected. And as we learn, it was a large group truck of people that were from a rural town that the federal government came in, told them to evacuate, didn't have a place to put them after they evacuated them, and rather than risk any of them being infected, took them out in the middle of nowhere, dumped them on the side of the street, and just killed all of them.
That is like one of the realest shits I've seen like on this show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that. It's not in the game, but it does, because obviously it can't be, right? It's a flashback. But it does a great job of showing the oppression from the government from the start. That's a big theme of the game that I was concerned up to that point that wasn't being explored fully, is showing why these people, why do the Fireflies exist?
Yeah.
What is it that the federal government did that made people want to become actual factual terrorists, right? We see in our own lives the amount of shit that the government does that isn't enough to push people over the edge. So what happened that pushed enough that people started to rebel back? And that's one of the things. We see that. People know that the federal government did that. We know that they're doing, hangings and stuff for minor infractions.
Yeah.
And really helps build the sense of oppression that is pervasive of the authorities in this world. So from there, we get a little side bit that has more just homages to the video game again, where there's a bit where Ellie, it was cool they got the licensing for Mortal Kombat, actually. Ellie finds an arcade cabinet that she had heard about but not actually played because they don't have arcade cabinets anymore.
Yeah.
And she goes and she twiddles with it a bit. In the game, they had a fake video game, but it's the same scene. So that was a really nice little homage. And Joel stashes the gun that he had, that he got from the military guy that he had killed earlier, basically saying, we're not going to find ammunition for this, and it sort of makes an unnecessary valuable target on this, and I have it anyways. Which is also a good thing, because in the game, that sort of an automatic rifle isn't something that you get until much, much later on in the game. So having Joel with this rifle right off the bat, for people who know the game, it's not bad, but it feels wrong. Like cheating. So that was nice to see him just sort of stash it away for later. And then we get a scene with Ellie in the basement of this old gas station that Joel's looking for some supplies that he stashed in, where she finds a infected person who had been collapsed on from the floor above, and that was kind of a weird scene,
It was unsettling.
It was. I don't know yet what they were trying to do with it, because there was like little bits of empathy in there, and then Ellie just stabs the guy and kills him.
Yeah, like empathy and sadism, and I'm like, what the fuck?
I wonder if, because they in the previous one they clearly showed that there was some sort of reason when the infected were starting to surround Tess, they didn't attack her. Very specifically, they didn't attack her, which leads to the very awkward kiss thing.
Yep.
I wonder if they were trying to sort of like a little bait and switch to show that that isn't happening with Ellie. That's the best that I could come up with. Otherwise, it seems a bit out of place. Other than just to show that Ellie doesn't have a problem just killing the infected as she needs to.
I don't know. I hope there's payoff.
Sure. I do too. From there, we have Ellie and Joel continue on their way to Bill's. And then we get a flashback after it was a very well done flashback. Ellie and Joel come up on the pile of long deceased bodies. It cuts to a flashback showing two of the deceased people based on their clothing. We can tell that it's the same person, a mother and her child who were killed, being carted away by the federal government. After the trucks leave, we get a cutaway to an unknown person hiding in his house, watching closed circuit CCTV cameras, watching the feds do their thing, waiting for them all to leave. And after the feds leave, we learn that that is Bill. And we get to continue following his story through the years as he is some sort of very obvious prepper type.
Yep.
He's got a big "Don't Tread on Me" flag in his basement, bunches of guns and shit. After the federal government leaves, he starts going around with a very premeditated plan, going to the convenience store, getting fencing, gas, big generators and shit. He goes down to like one of the power stations that was turned off and turns it back on. Very, prepper kind of shit. He had a plan and he was executing it. And he sets up basically a perimeter around this little town he was living in with big fences, shotgun booby traps, punji pits, all kind of shit, to defend his house.
Honestly, I was kind of impressed on how well it went.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it went a little too smoothly, but it's made for TV, so.
I mean, with everything else that happens in this episode, they couldn't really waste their time on it.
No, they couldn't. It was very much a montage, and it did the job that it needed to show Bill doing his prepper shit and setting up his perimeter.
He's very good at what he does.
He is. From there, I'm trying to remember the exact order it goes in. Eventually, maybe we should jump ahead because it doesn't really matter. Yeah. He does his prepper shit. Eventually, in one of his pit traps, he gets a notification that someone was caught. He goes out there thinking it's probably an infected person. He finds that it's not. It's just a regular dude.
A charming regular dude.
Yeah. He goes and he's like very clearly taken aback that this is another person. We learn that he is there because the Baltimore quarantine zone had fallen for some reason. So it gives us a bit of a geographical perspective, right?
Yeah.
We know that Joel is going to Bill's from Boston. We know this other person is sort of near Baltimore. So that gives you a sort of broad idea that Bill's location is sort of on the East Coast still, but like sort of probably like Virginia area in the rural areas out there. Bill helps the guy with a ladder to get out of the pit. He has one of the federal, infection scanners, confirms that the guy is not infected, and gives the guy, out of the reluctant kindness, lets him have a meal, gets showered up, and intends to have him send him on his way.
Yep.
That's not what happens. Not at first, at least. The guy, after finishing the meal, before Bill can kick him out, he basically is just like, don't do it just yet. I want to play your piano. Because I haven't seen a fucking piano in so long, and I want to play a goddamn piano. And he does. Goes over, he kind of sucks a bit, and encourages Bill, who owns the piano, of course, so he must know how to play it and is much better at playing it, to play the piano. So engage with it a little bit, and we get the reveal that Bill and the other guy are both gay.
Which I don't know how long. Well, you knew,
yes,
obviously. I, on the other hand, I was getting the gaydar vibes immediately.
There's definitely some hints that they have.
Yeah. I mean, I liked a couple of the scenes where, like, we find out this person's name's Frank.
Yes.
Frank is eating a meal with Bill, and Bill's, like, giving him a wine. He's like, oh, to pair rabbit with that wine. He's like, yeah, you probably wouldn't think to know that about me just by seeing me. He's like, no, I do. I'm like, oh.
There's little hints.
Yeah, it's cute. It's very cute.
It is. It's handled very well.
Yes.
In the game, just to reference back, the only real hint that we get at the fact that Bill and Frank have a romantic relationship of any type other than a strictly business one is through the literal calling them of partners, right? And I guess I'll have to wait to say that. It is never explicitly said, but it is very heavily implied. And further reinforced later by Ellie stealing some of his porno mags that are featuring a bunch of dudes. So that's the sort of dead giveaway that they have.
Yep.
That they're not that kind of partner, not the kind you thought at first. As it goes, Bill and Frank end up staying together for the night. Frank says, I'm not a whore. If we're gonna do this, you're gonna let me stay around for a couple fucking more days and not just kick me out right away. And then they cut from a couple of days to a couple of years later, where they're very clearly in more of a relationship with one another. gist of that that flash forward
Yep.
is to show that they've been together for like 2 years at that point, was roughly the time span. Frank had clearly, settled in well with Bill and was basically ordering that he wanted to make the little town that they were living in not look like such a piece of shit. To put it better than any other way, he just doesn't want it to look so bad. He wanted to go around to some of the shops that were there, make them look like they were real shops, and maybe get some stuff from them. Particularly, I think he was fond of a boutique that was there.
Yeah, the clothing boutique.
You know,
Yeah.
and basically just put a fresh coat of paint on the house, keep the lawn nice and trimmed, and just make everything not look like such shit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a really great piece where I gotta see if I can find it. The quote about Nazis and the government.
Oh yeah, you think the government's
Where
full of Nazis? They are full of Nazis, but that was before the apocalypse.
Yeah. Well, now they are, but not back then.
Yeah.
It was great little bits now that you have Bill and Frank together where there's some genuinely good comedy that comes out of nowhere and is very welcome for changing the pace of it. I think that's the big thing for seeing Bill and Frank's relationship outside of just having a gay couple be represented in a way that's normal and not disrespectful or stereotypical or any way. They're just two dudes that seem to genuinely love each other. And there's nothing more to it than that because it doesn't need to be any more than that.
Quite frankly, it's
refreshing.
It is such a simple but impactful love story.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then it leads them to be able to have a very different tone than they could in the rest of the story if they just followed Ellie and Joel.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have room for that type of, like full chuckle levity, a good quip when you're constantly being hunted down by zombies and bandits and trying to not die all the time.
I hate it when that happens.
Yeah. It's just Tuesdays. Bill concedes and allows Frank to get some of these concessions to, make it look less like a dump, have some stuff that he enjoys doing. I'm trying to think where it cuts to from there. I think at that point it cuts to the bandit attack.
Yeah, the one that goes horribly, horribly wrong.
Yeah, where we get to see some of Bill's a bit more gruesome traps in action, hidden shotguns and explosives and stuff going off. And it's done very well. It's done mostly from the perspective of Frank as he is awoken to the gunfire and finds Bill out in the middle of the street, basically like going full Death Wish, shooting back at all of these bandits until Bill eventually gets shot himself, quite badly even.
Mm-hmm.
Frank helps him back into the house and probably does the as close to the equivalent as surgery as that they have at that point, to make sure that Bill doesn't bleed out from a really significant gut wound that he had from being shot by the bandits that were trying to attack them. And it, further reinforces the relationship, showing how Bill has this long list of plans of like, Frank, I'm done. Here's what you got to do. And Frank's just like, shut the fuck up. I'm not going anywhere.
Yep. Again, another solid part of the story.
Mm-hmm. From that, we get Bill and Frank meeting Joel and Tess. They have a little garden party, even.
Yes. It was kind of weird, honestly, because I'm like so used to this episode now featuring these two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and they do it in a good way where they don't tell you that it's Joel and Tess. It's just Frank says he was on a radio talking with some woman, and Bill, understandably, I think, kind of just snaps a bit like, you fucking what? Are you stupid? Are you asking for us to get killed? And then it cuts, and we learn that this woman was Tess, and the man that she's with is Joel. And it was a fun reveal.
I love the dynamic between Joel and fucking Frank.
Yeah.
Not Frank, Bill.
Bill, yeah. There's like the exact same.
Yeah.
Like two sides of the same coin.
Who the fuck are you?
And
I'm you, but straight.
yeah, exactly. You have Frank or Bill, which is just like Joel but gay and not with the Texas accent.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. It was very good. Shows effectively how their business relationship kicked off, and they started their radio communications with a bit more code that way. Um, but it's effective. It shows that Bill and Frank have this working relationship now with Joel and Tess, where Bill and Frank have supplies that Bill and Tess don't. And there's a good bit where Joel, being the contractor and construction man, is basically just like, because I think Bill is the one who's just like, "What do you think you have that we don't have? We have everything." And Joel's just like, "Your fence has like 2 more years before it starts to rust out." And Bill's just like, "Excuse me." Very good. It's effective.
Yeah.
And it does a good job of showing to Bill how the absolute isolationist that he's been having might not have been the best route for his long-term survival. If they hadn't come across Joel and Tess, things could have gone really bad for him. From there, we get a fun bit where Frank traded one of Bill's guns for strawberry seeds from Tess and grew them in the back, which is just a neat little scene. I
Yeah.
think it's interesting that whenever you get these sort of like post-apocalypse scenarios, it's always strawberries. Always strawberries.
Wait,
That are like
what else have you seen with strawberries?
Firefly did it.
Really?
Yeah, there's a
Oh,
big thing in the first episode where the preacher guy in Firefly is able to basically bribe his way onto their ship by giving the person who is controlling who gets on the ship and who doesn't with a box of strawberries.
fair enough.
It's like a little trope in the after the end of the world, there's always strawberries and they're always still good.
Strawberries are a pretty good fruit. I don't know if I would
Mm-hmm.
call them my favorite fruit, but they're up there.
I mean, it's the kind of thing though where if you find strawberries in the post-apocalypse, it's a good day,
Must be.
right?
Yep.
Um, so yeah, goes from that, and then we get the cut to near present time, and we learn a couple of things. We learn that Frank has some sort of a progressive condition that's clearly left him pretty severely weakened. He's now moving around in a wheelchair. He's much more gaunt. Both he and Bill are showing their age as they've grayed quite significantly.
Yep.
And we get, you know what? I'm not going to say how the episode ends because it is really, really good and handled really well. But we see this progression through their lives up until the present day, how they came to have this sort of fortification, this relationship with Joel and Tess. And from that, how Joel is able to go there to get the supplies that he needs to make the next leg of their journey with him and Ellie.
Yep.
Now that Tess is gone, and it's wonderful. By far the best episode. And as a little cherry on top, it got to piss off some homophobes, and that's always a good
Dude,
thing.
Okay, so I knew this was going to be like a fucking episode because it's been trending on Twitter for a while now. Like the moment it came out, and then
yeah.
I let myself go into the trending tab to like as I was watching it, and I wasn't spoiled or anything, thank God. But the homophobic rage was real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my favorite thing that I saw as a result of this was that they very obviously tried to review bomb it on IMDb, and they were only able to get it down to an 8.
Oh, an 8.
An 8. Yeah. Which is, I love that. They tried so damn hard, and they still couldn't really do it.
I respect that. IMDb finally did some fucking justice.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, episode 3, phenomenal. Now we have episode 4. Joel and Ellie have a truck. They're on their way. They've been resupplied. They got a shower. And they're making their way further west. If it follows the game, when we meet them this week, they will be on their way into Pittsburgh.
Oh shit, what happens in Pittsburgh? Wait, I should probably wait for it.
Whole lot. I'm not going to say.
Damn.
I will say in the game, there is pretty large, gameplay heavy segments, like I was telling you about the hotel, that they're going to have to find some ways to cut out. But there's one scene in particular that the teaser for the next episode is already confirmed for me that's going to happen. And I'm very excited to see how they do. Should be good. While it has some gameplay heavy segments, the important part isn't the gameplay, and I'm hopeful that they're able to translate that well. Showing off how naive Ellie is about the world outside of Boston and how not so Joel is.
Okay.
Uh, and if it goes really well, we might even see some new characters introduced. That's my hope.
I'm sorry, I'm still crying over Bill and Frank.
We'll see. I hope they don't do these characters in a flashback, because I don't think that would do them nearly as much justice as it worked for Bill. Bill is a character that we see in the game, frankly, quite briefly. He's basically just there to give exposition and to be a means to the end for Ellie and Joel. And having him get some real character and some character development was a welcome change, and I'm glad they did it. There's a good interview bit that they had. They've been doing these at the ends of the episode, so they talked about that, where they try not to change things that they don't need to change, but when they see things that they think don't necessarily, not that they don't work, but more so that doesn't translate well from the game to a TV format, they look for ways that they can really change them for the better.
Yeah,
And Bill's level is very much that. There's a ton of gameplay, a bunch of mechanics that you're learning, new gear that you're getting, crafting recipes, and knowing how that doesn't translate to TV well, right?
Yeah.
It makes sense for them to just get rid of that and focus on something that we didn't have the faintest idea about before. Even if they have to change a couple of key details to do it, it's very clearly for the better of the narrative that they're telling. And it doesn't change Joel and Ellie's narrative particularly. Bill is always a side character, so changing his story gives you good characterization without changing the core of the narrative and the track it's taking. It's very well done.
Agreed. Although I don't know anything about the source material.
Yeah. I hope Nick Offerman gets a supporting actor award because he absolutely deserved it after that.
Yeah. This is actually my first time ever seeing Nick Offerman in anything.
Really? I love him.
Yeah, I know he's big as Nick Swanson and whatnot, but this is legitimately, I've never seen the show that he's in for Nick Swanson or anything like that.
He's done a lot. What was it? I gotta check back. One thing that I know about particularly, he actually wrote a really good history book about American political figures.
Really?
Generally speaking. Yeah, it's excellent. It's called Gumption, I think.
Oh, yes.
I highly recommend it. It's very good.
We covered it on the show once. I remember that.
It's a good book. It's surprisingly good given that, it's written by an actor.
Yeah. Most actors can't do that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's it. Anything else to add?
10 out of 10 episode. I wish I was gay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was very good. It was very, very good.
Sorry, I gotta send a quick text to my girlfriend to say not to take that line quite literally.
I didn't mean it. Didn't mean it.
Babe, stop.
If we're good there, then I would like to talk about a movie from 2007 that I just watched this week.
Oh, do go on.
I watched for the first time No Country for Old Men. It received heaps of accolades when it came out in 2007, 2008. And it is the kind of movie that you can't see a Reddit thread about what is your favorite movie without a million people bringing it up as their favorite movie. Right?
Okay.
So it's been, I have a literal list that I keep written down. When I hear movies that I haven't seen that are widely recommended or regarded as good, I try to add it to the list so I don't forget it for later. This is one of them, of course, because I had heard so much about people talking about it. It's Coen Brothers piece, starring Tommy Lee Jones, Javier Bardem, and Josh Brolin playing the leads. And I think it is, not even think, it is, in my mind, the most overrated piece of media I've ever watched.
Dun, dun, dun.
This is the kind of thing that has, across the board, 9.5s out of 10 kind of ratings. I think it has like a 93 on Rotten Tomatoes right now. And it is like the darling of all of the the r/film critic type subreddits. And after watching it, The best thing that I can say about it is that the awards that it received for acting and cinematography are well deserved. It is a very well shot film and incredibly well acted. One of the other things that I hear talked about it a lot is in the talk broadly about like Hollywood villains, right? What makes a good villain?
Mm-hmm.
And the stereotypical ones that you hear is like the Joker in The Dark Knight and Anton shit Kurgan in No Country for Old Men, Javier Bardem's character, as like the quintessential peak of what it means, like the two ends of the spectrum for what it means to be a villain in Hollywood, right? And to Javier Bardem's credit, he does a phenomenal job in the role, acting wise, and even there's like in isolation of certain scenes, which I think is how a lot of the what I can only describe as the like r slash I am very smart people take it in perspective as they look at it on a scene by scene basis and forget to analyze it as a whole, where they see scenes like the infamous gas station scene with Javier Bardem's character, where it is a phenomenal example of Javier Bardem's acting capability and the nature of the character itself that is trying to be portrayed in the film. And then they ignore other elements of it that prevent it from being a cohesive adaptation. Because No Country for Old Men is an adaptation of a book by the same name.
Really?
It is, yeah. And one of the main things that is completely missed in the adaptation is that in the book, Tommy Lee Jones' character is the main character, the main perspective that the story is told from, and Josh Brolin's is a side character. And that's lost by having the first like 30 minutes of the movie being from Josh Brolin's perspective. After you've seen the movie, you can understand more what the intention is, particularly of the author. There's a brief monologue at the start about talking about, the old men in the title, about the sort of old guard of Western sheriffs in these very rural areas that often policed, allegedly policed through knowing everyone rather than by the brute force of their position, and how as the times are changing, the tactics that they were using prior, in particular as like, drugs and crime started to ramp up along the Mexico border, these old tactics and the men who implemented them no longer work. It's literally the title. This is no longer a country for the old men of the West.
Okay.
But you lose that perspective when they don't show Tommy Lee Jones' character for more than like snippets at a time until you're like a quarter of the way into it. And it kind of loses the message. It confuses you into making you think through traditional storytelling language that we already have through, you can't see it. I'm vaguely gesturing to all of the movies ever right now. When you have established precedent and you want to break that precedent, you can't fault the viewer for going in with the expectation of what is standard. If you want to change what the expectation is, it is not on the onus of the viewer to make that connection on their own, and especially not in a first viewing, right?
Okay.
Subverting expectations is good and can be very effective, but you can't do it out of nowhere and then be critical of people for not picking it up right away. And that's where the problem comes in with a lot of it. Because after seeing this, I had to look up why the hell are everybody raving about this film? And the amount of pretentiousness in the way that people talk about this movie is astonishing. Probably the most that I've seen in my life in reading shit on Reddit and about film, where you have people who are like, oh, well, No Country for Old Men is not an easy movie, but it's hardly the most difficult movie to understand. If you can't understand No Country for Old Men, you clearly aren't ready for film critical level analysis. It is just dripping with these people being pretentious pricks.
That's like Reddit in general, though, dude.
This was to a degree. That was just like one example. That is Reddit. Generally, those people get shunned to the corners of Reddit, though.
Mm-hmm.
These are the popular opinions that are being reinforced with hundreds of upvotes, as the person that's just like, I didn't think it was that good, is being downvoted to oblivion. It's very backwards seeming to me.
Okay.
So yeah, to me, No Country for Old Men, visually, very good. Acting, very good. In terms of telling a story, fails on many levels and
Interest.
deserves to be called out for those failings.
Okay. So
Do you care
you
about spoilers? Do you plan to see it anytime soon?
I plan to see it, but I don't really care so much about spoilers because it's not that high on my list.
The big turn of the movie happens as they go into like it's hard to break it down into a typical act structure. I'll give it credit for that. Is that because of the way it's shot, it does sort of shift around the perspective of like which is the beginning, middle, and end. Because as you're getting to what you expect to be the climax, the Josh Brolin's character, who you are led to believe up to that point is the main character, even though he's not, dies off screen.
What?
Yeah, he is in a fight with Javier Bardem. Both of them get injured. Javier Bardem stays in the U.S. Uh, Brolin goes down across the Mexico border, finds himself in a hospital, and while he's in Mexico, planning his move to get back into the U.S., he's staying in a hotel. It cuts. He's in the hotel talking with someone. It cuts over to an interaction between Bardem and another one of his, bad guy compatriots where Bardem kills the other guy. It cuts back to Mexico with a bunch of Mexicans running out of the hotel, jumping in their car and running away, and the police chief, Tommy Lee Jones, coming up on the crime scene, and we learn that he's just dead. He's been shot and killed.
Interesting.
Yep. And there's like 30 minutes of movie left. So that's the main thing. And the problem with that is that they reinforced through the story that they decided to adapt that Brolin's character is the main character when he's not. He's not meant to be the main character. Tommy Lee Jones is supposed to be. His role is the sheriff. But that's not well established and it gets lost. So it's overrated as fuck, in my opinion. It's a good movie still. It's not like it's not gonna be a waste of your time, but it's like it's a solid it's a 9 out of 10 right up until that point, and then it immediately goes down to like a 7 for me because it feels disrespectful of the viewer's time. It feels very much the same way as like the Snyder cut of Justice League, where I don't care how good the movie is. If you're not going to be respectful about my time as the viewer, you can fuck off. It's like Dallas. You know that whole thing with the TV show Dallas,
No, go on.
where so in the TV show Dallas, God, when was this? I gotta look it up real quick. The gist of it was that this was a long running serial in like the 70s, 1978 to 1991, where one of the main characters, JR, was killed in one of the episodes. And the backlash from it, from him being killed, which was significant because it's a main character, he's the main character. They basically retconned it, and it was just a dream thing. And that's become like the quintessential bad writing technique where you never have it be just a dream. That is never a good idea. You never want to be disrespectful and lead people down the path of telling one story just to 180 it and go the other way.
Okay.
And this falls into that trap. Where even if it didn't mean to, it leads the viewer down one understanding of the movie, and then it turns it around in the last third without handling it with much tact. So that's my review of No Country for Old Men. It's not bad, but I was very disappointed by it. But it's off my list now, so I don't have to watch it again.
So I saw The Whale with my girlfriend,
Yes.
and that movie reads as like a movie made written by somebody who thinks they are smarter than they actually are. Because the whole point of it is, I don't think it's a good movie. We just missed Brendan Fraser. That is my whole review of The Whale. It is one of those films where it is very obvious what its message is. And if you do not agree with its message, it will actively kind of insult you. And I don't know if that's particularly effective for a film like this. And to be honest, I kind of hated every character in the film.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's Not what I've heard from people who've seen it.
Really? What have you
Yeah.
heard? Because I will diffuse all that and tell them they're
Um,
all dumb.
I guess most of it has just been praise for the lead.
Like, Brendan Fraser is a really good actor in this. In fact, I will
Yeah.
say he's the cream of the crop in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do not like the main character.
Interesting.
I think he's a punk ass bitch. So his whole character is that he is a professor for like an adjunct professor for college, teaching student like first years how to write, which
Mm-hmm.
is probably the worst job in the world if you're asking me, because you have to read first year like college freshman essays. No one writes well in their first year of college. That is a fact. Um, and a constant conflict he has in the movie is that he wishes he could read something honest. Now, this comes in the form of his daughter, who he believes is an honest writer. But throughout the whole movie, he's like, I just want honesty. I want honesty. And like, he's terrible in my eyes because all the character does is lie consistently. And I just cannot get behind a character like that.
Interesting.
I understand the juxtaposition. I think it's actually pretty smart compared to like some of the other metaphors they use in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
However, it doesn't mean I have to like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's one of those movies I think you should go in not knowing too much about, but I feel like they pulled their punches with a lot of the scenes that they were doing. And if they really want to incite some emotions with me, they should have just gone full on tens instead of like pulling like a punch at a 7.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Would you recommend people see it still? I guess that's what I'm curious about. Because I've heard a lot of I think it's fair to say that a lot of the praise for it has been colored by people's appreciation for Brendan Fraser doing work again.
Yes, I argue that tremendously. Um, I think it's the kind of movie that you shouldn't rely on others' opinions because there's a lot to like digest on it, such as there's a lot of the themes are religion, and it kind of goes for the snide atheist view of religion, where it does more harm than good, which I think that's just Reddit pandering at the end of the day sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there is something to really interpret from it. And if you just miss Brendan Fraser and you want to see like someone perform a very well acted role, it's definitely worth your time. I think a lot of my problems with this movie is just with the writing.
Interesting.
Yeah. So yes, I wouldn't recommend going to see it in theaters. I wait till it goes on streaming,
Mm. Yep.
and only if it's on the streaming service that you already have.
Yep. Yep. I think that's fair. I've been taking that stance more and more in general.
Yeah.
I'm getting more tired of the pretentiousness of a lot of the directors that are in Hollywood today. With the oh, you have to see this in the highest resolution possible.
There's nothing wrong with that
shit.
input, but you need to have something substantial to actually like fucking back up your claims.
I don't even agree with that. I can appreciate from the director's perspective they want it to be viewed in the highest fidelity possible. I don't care.
You don't care.
It's the same way as like the more that you tell me to do something your way, even if it's the correct way to do it, I'm gonna not want to do it just because you're trying to tell me how to do it.
Good point.
Yeah, I'm just tired of it.
Yeah, it's Adele syndrome. Don't you dare fucking shuffle my album.
I'm gonna wait for Avatar 2 to come out on DVD.
Yeah.
I'm gonna burn it to a VHS. I'm gonna watch it that way, just to spite James Cameron.
Dude, you're gonna stop with VHS?
It's just the most commercial that I have available to me, I think.
Okay, I was about to say, what you do is 180 like YouTube rips and like do Avatar: The Way of Water Part 1 out of 14.
No, because I get it, but I want it to still be watchable. I think there's like a happy medium between bad but not that bad, where it's obvious garbage, but you can look through the obvious garbage.
Okay, yeah, I see what you mean.
I remember there's a while on Discord for a while when the Morbius meme was going around. People had taken the entirety of Morbius and condensed it down into a small enough GIF that you could share it on a Discord upload.
Oh yes, I remember that.
And it's like the kind of thing where like technically you can do that, but it's unwatchable in that quality. Nobody is going to sit there and watch all of Morbius on a 16 by 16 pixel JPEG because why would you? You can't see what's happening. So there's a minimum fidelity where it hits like the uncanny valley of shit.
Agreed. I once saw someone compress all of Breaking Bad into one GIF. I guess it's like the same way of those old you remember those Game Boy Advance video nows?
Yeah, I kind of do.
Yeah, because like the whole point of it was Game Boy Advance cartridges to hold like video formats and someone actually fucking madman put a Shrek video now out there on the GBA where it's just the whole movie of Shrek.
Nice.
I've seen videos of it play. It's like 3 frames per second.
Mm-hmm. I believe it.
Yeah, I
It would
believe it.
probably not. I don't know. I guess it would depend on the how much storage you could fit in a GBA cart today. You could probably get pretty good amounts.
You think so?
Yeah, because it's a space thing, right? The GBA carts were made, back in 1990, whatever. Now with today's technology, you could fit a much more dense storage chip, flash storage chip on them with the same physical size.
So, because of the low capacity of GBA advanced cartridges, normal ranging from 4 to 32 megabytes in their time, with video cartridges reaching sizes up to 64 megabytes at the time.
Interesting. Yeah,
Damn, we've come far from that.
definitely have. It's it's crazy. I'd love to see physical games media make a comeback. Never will, but I'd like it. It'd be fun.
Yeah, I heard a rumor in Brazil they were going to start only doing virtual Xbox releases.
Interesting. It makes sense.
Yeah,
It's a huge market. Could easily see them because what was it? The Sega Genesis, I want to say, still had new game support in Brazil in that region up until like 2018.
really.
Because yeah, there was just so many of them in the regions still being used that people it was economical for people to make games for them. Within that region, of course, and release them on physical cartridges. Where they could still make money off of it just because it was such a common thing. Something like that.
I'm kind of curious now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the average Elden Ring capacity that you need to run Elden Ring is 60 gigabytes.
You should look up Forspoken.
Oh no, why?
That's particularly bad from what I've heard.
Forspoken game size 150 gigs?
Yeah.
What the fuck were they doing? Have they never
It's
heard of
like
compression?
it's like with the original Titanfall, where the game was only like 3 gigs, but they forgot to compress the audio, so there was like 60 gigs of uncompressed audio tracks.
I mean, that must have sounded real nice.
I don't think so, because this is still the Xbox 360. It wasn't like super high quality anything, but they sure did it because nobody thought to check not to.
Okay, this
Yeah.
is. I'm going to do some quick math real quick.
Mm.
I want to see how many Game Boy cartridges it would take to run Forspoken.
Would be curious how many it would take compared to how many have been made.
It would take about 4,687 and a half. So we'll round it up to 8. Um, Game Boy Advance cartridges to run Forspoken.
Interesting. That's far less than I expected it to be.
I honestly expected it to be like in the 5 digits, but
Yeah.
it's still ridiculous. Do you think we'll ever get to the age where games are going to be a terabyte large?
Not for a while. They're still somewhat limited to the storage that's available in consoles
Yeah,
for now.
yeah.
Um, that said, storage is getting really cheap still. You can get a few terabytes of storage without much trouble. It's just going to be a question of when something like a 20 terabyte hard drive falls into the range of commodity. We're very close already, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you can get, I have an 8 terabyte hard drive in my computer that wasn't, it was cheap. It was the cheapest that I could find at the time. That was over like a terabyte that I use for storing games and shit. Um, it's just going to be a question of when it gets to the price point that PlayStation and Microsoft are able to do the same.
I agree.
That's coming up pretty soon. I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Call of Duty game that is more than 500 gigs before 2025.
Damn.
That'd be my guess. Because they're on track for that. They're already pushing over 200 when you have all the DLC and everything downloaded at the same time. Yeah.
Well, would you like to call it here, Mr. Kyril, before I start having an
Yeah.
existential crisis?
No, I think that's good. I'll say though, it sounds like a lot, right?
Yeah.
But it's hard. It is easy to lose the perspective of how normal that is once you start to look at like older consoles, right? Think about the jump from games being on Nintendo 64 cartridges to games being on DVDs and Blu-rays. That wasn't that big of a jump, but you're talking about magnitudes of difference as to the amount of data that can be stored on them. So it's just one of those things that's going to keep happening as long as people want better resolutions, better textures, better audio. It's got to be bigger files.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I'm the infamous Orion, and I've been a Schmo.
I'm Cairo, and I've been a Schmo.
And this has been The Last of Schmoes, Part 2. But not actually Part 2, because that's probably next season. Oh, yeah, I got announced for
got
another season.
confirmed. Got confirmed.
We're winning, boys.